In television, we spend a lot of time talking about professional sports. Tonight's documentary special is about a man who hasn't forgotten that thousands of Winnipeggers will never play for the Jets. John Robertson, for the past 20 years, has been operating the Canford Sports Leagues, a group of casual participation sports whose only aim is to get people active and having fun. He is known as the founder of League Sponge Hockey, but he is more than that. He is a true Winnipeg booster and a real local hero. The story begins in this Fort Rouge house.
With 16 kids in the family, 10 boys, 6 girls, we never knew Mom was pregnant. Another child was just an expected thing around Christmas. One of the little footholds we have, and it's a record we still lay claim to, is that at St. Ignatius School, we had a Robertson in every grade from 1 to 8. And that was great. It was just a readily made franchise for any sport that we were involved in. If it was summer, we played slow pitch. If it was spongy during the winter, that was our forte. I could wake up on a Saturday morning and say, Jim, Tony, Harry, Larry, you're on that team. Joey, Frankie, Peter, you're on my team. When you got 10 brothers, we played since '58. And we invented games. Back when you're young, that's our first exposure to any kind of sports, is making up things as you go. 30 years ago, we used to be playing as youngsters, and we started off with a nice red, white, and blue ball, having it bounce around on frozen, snow-packed tennis court lots at La Vérendrye School, of all places, in the Fort Rouge area. And after a month, that ball would no longer be a ball. It would be flattened down to what we'd call a tweeter, and it would take on a sound when you slap it, and like similar to a whistle. And with the brothers in goal, and we'd always try to get the youngest boys to play goal, because the older brothers would like to stick handle a little bit more, like Gordie Howe, not like Wayne Gretzky, but like Gordie Howe or John Belleville. But for those early years, that we'd go out at 8:30 in the morning and not come back until supper time, and we'd take our little ball that would come home a sponge puck, and the kids would join in. They'd sit in amazement, the other people in the area, and watch us play as brothers, and some of their friends would eventually join in. And we never in our wildest dreams would think down the road that 95 you'd have maybe 600-700 teams in the city of Winnipeg, 7,000-8,000 individuals taking hold of that sport and making it their #1 activity.
There's definitely an art to this game. We go for appearance.
What do you doctors think?
We had heard about the Robertsons when George Dawson and I coached at St. Paul's. We had heard about a bunch of really good athletes, but we really thought that maybe John wasn't going to be able to come to St. Paul's, or the other brothers, which the other brothers didn't, because they might not be able to afford it, etc. But John came, and in very short order, John dominated life at St. Paul's High School. He ended up being the president of the student body. He was the two-way all-star in high school football for 2 years as a halfback and as a safety. John ended up winning the Harry Hood Trophy, which is emblematic of the top high school football player: ability, scholastic, social involvement in the community. Those 3 categories. We were so proud.
He developed coordination and techniques that most of the rest of us just didn't even think of, really. He could come up with fakes and dekes, whether it was in basketball or football, that no one could anticipate his moves. And I wasn't nearly the athlete that John was, but he'd even come up to me after a game whenever we happened to play a sport together, and he'd say, "Oh, you made a great block there," or "You'd made a great move in that particular sequence of plays." And it may have been the only good move I had made the whole game, but John had noticed it, and he'd bring it to my attention just to encourage me on. To give you a taste of the intestinal fortitude of this man is, I remember one time when he had the end of his finger cut off, and he had a brace and a contraption on his finger, and most of the rest of us would have just wimped around with this on our hand and stayed away from sports for a while, not John.
He was out extra time every practice learning how to catch punts with one hand primarily and kind of handling it with the other. It was unbelievable. He dropped everything for about the first 3-4 nights, and he just stayed out extra. He stayed out extra, stayed out extra. He returned punts for touchdowns during the high school season, basically playing with one hand.
People might think it's crazy to be out here in the cold, cold weather, but it's Winnipeg. You can't hibernate all winter long. If you do, you're going to go crazy.
It's the friends and the fun.
And you make a couple of good plays, or once in a while make a nice shot. You just you dream that you're that star that never was. So, and everybody feels the same way.
All anybody talks about after the game is how many goals they scored or how great of a play they made, and nobody disputes it because it doesn't really mean anything. It's just you beat one team one night, they beat you the next night. Everybody has fun, nobody gets hurt, and everybody keeps in touch.
It's the greatest sport in the world, man.
You're watching The Richest Man in Town, a CKND Sports Line special presentation brought to you by the Birchwood Automotive Group.
This is the 20th anniversary of sponge hockey. It's played under the rules that we've structured or formulated in the city of Winnipeg. So 75 was the birth under those rules and regulations, which is a group of guys coming out and having some fun. The first tournaments we organized for sponge hockey back in the mid-70s would be the winter of 74, 75. It was an effort to get the kids involved in that area, as a Broadway Optimist area. And the way I thought about doing it was to get the adults out first. Throw in what we called a one-day tournament, get 8 teams out, beer gardens, have some fun. In our very first effort doing so, we played according to NHL rules, so there was contact. There was physical contact with beer, and I think the police were almost involved the very first effort trying to get it going. Went back to the drawing board. Everybody had a great time, if they could remember it. Went back to the drawing board and saying there's some changes that have to be made to make this a little bit easier to get up the next morning. And we toyed with the rules and regulations of 3 basic sports: basketball, hockey, and soccer. After that initial tournament, word got out that there was a new sport in town. And then within 2 years, 1977, the winter of 77, we found ourselves throwing our Canford Cup annual tournaments with 128 teams within a 2-year period. It jumped from 8 teams up to 128. We could only accept 128 for the following 3 years up to 1980 because we were locked into using community centers on weekends, after hours when they closed down for ice hockey, on Saturday and Sunday mornings with no access to any of their equipment to remove the snow off the rinks. And eventually we had to knock on Parks and Recreation's door back in '81 and say, look, can we have a site of our own? And we used a mobile trailer, 10 by 55, behind the Sergeant Park Oval, in which 120-some teams participated in our very first year. And we found that couldn't continue because we were using temporary facilities. We needed a permanent home. We didn't want to operate. And the growth of the league just seemed to be hand in hand with limited facilities. So by getting our first permanent home out at the old Rosewell site in 1982, we were able to shoot all the way up to about 150, 60 teams. And over that 3 or 4 year period thereafter, by the 1988, 1989 season, we're up over 250 some sponge hockey teams. So the interest was overwhelming. So when you look at the 20-year period, it now is at the point in the 90s where we'd have to say that Canford and non-Canford leagues, there must be between 700 to 800 sponge hockey teams playing in the city of Winnipeg.
I've been refereeing for about 16 years. The most difference between this game and hockey is we have a key. And there's a 3-second rule, as in basketball, with the key. There is no body contact, there is no high sticking, there is no the clutch and grab or the stick onto the body, as in, you know, a lot of your hockey games and all that. It's we try and keep it as safe and, you know, as fun as possible for, you know, both the players and everybody else. And very enjoyable to watch, a lot more so than hockey.
Really?
Oh, really? You get a good sponge hockey team who's playing out there that's moving up and down the ice. It can be fast in hockey because you don't have the clutch and grab. People are not worried about the contact phase of it. And even with sponge hockey shoes, it can be a very fast, quick, and enjoyable game.
For 21 years he's been doing this, and obviously he's doing something right.
There's thousands upon thousands of members out there, ex-members. If you had all the people that were involved with Canford at one time or another, probably would number in 50,000 by now. Present membership, I would imagine, is probably still in the neighborhood of 5,000.
The Dublin inquiry, which was commissioned after the Ben Johnson scandal in 1990 at the Olympics, said, look, let's revamp, let's look at what's important, what are the priorities of recreation in the future. And one of their 70 recommendations said, let's focus on the casualness of getting people involved in sport. 80% of the kids that play youth sports never start smoking. When you look at Winnipeg, not Winnipeg, but Canada being second in youth violence behind the United States, and only third in youth suicide behind Norway and Australia, you know, it sends a message. We've lost 115,000 young Manitobans in the last decade between the ages of 18 and 35, 15,000 in 1991 alone. So when you're looking at the Dublin inquiry being important, they're saying, hey, look, let's spend more time and resources on the youth in our country so they can get good recreational habits to follow through right throughout their life. And that is something that we do not stress enough of.
John's actual title is executive director. I'm president. I'm a figurehead president because he does all the work. He floods the rink. He cleans the rink. He takes the tickets, so to speak. He plans everything. He schedules everything. He collects the money, pays the bills, lobbies at all the meetings of the community and the city and the province. It's ongoing. I don't know where he finds the time. I wouldn't do it. The amount of money that he gets is virtually nil. I don't think you'd do it either.
People that play in the league, truly some of them, that don't know John Robertson or know the people that are involved, only judge our programs on the 2 hours they're out there playing their games each week. And when they have a few beer, they're talking in the pub saying, God, Robertson must be rich. I wonder where he lives in Tuxedo. In fact, I had one chap said he followed me home one night thinking I switched cars going to Tuxedo. Found out shortly enough that I went to a house that was not of his liking.
He's been offered all kinds of positions that would pay him 3-4 times what he draws. He just draws basically minimum living wage.
He did have those offers of possibly a house and all other kinds of things, and John knows those offers, but he thought about it, and I know he thought about it long and hard, and he just couldn't jeopardize his own reputation to kind of have this thing maybe get out of control and have people do things to Canford which it wasn't intended to do. The people that participate in Canford are people that want to. It's affordable, it's fun, and John makes it that.
But one of the kids that I did talk to, they said, you know what, Mr. Robertson, I never skated. I never played ice hockey. I never have. I've just played sponge hockey. That's all I've done. And if you're keeping that one individual active through the choice of your sport program, and it is just simple casualness of sport, it's fit the bill for that individual.
I said, John, what motivates you to do what you're doing? I said, as far as I'm concerned, with your ability and talent, you could have been anything you wanted to be if you put your mind to it. And he told me, he says, Greg, he said, I believe that what I'm doing is so worthwhile that I'm helping others, that he said, for instance, when jocks who have graduated from high school and who have been in the limelight, and then they get out into the working world and they're disillusioned with the fact that they aren't in the limelight anymore. He said some of them might turn to alcohol or some other forms of entertainment, and he says, I thought that putting together the Canford Sports Center would really give them an outlet to continue to pursue sports, which is obviously something that they had loved to do.
He would never want to use the word hero, but those that know him have to respect him, have to respect, you know, how much he loves what he's doing. John Robertson is the Canford Sports Group. John Robertson is the Manitoba Sponge Hockey Association.
I don't know what's driven me to continue. Maybe I just went out for a game of spongy and I never came back after 20 years.
You're watching The Richest Man in Town, a CKND Sports Line special presentation brought to you by the Birchwood Automotive Group.
As long as you can walk, then you can play this game.
You've got engineers, you've got the nurses, you've got the laborers, you've got, you name it, you've got it out here playing spongy.
We played out on the streets in the Tuxedo area, and we had a gas.
My first sponge hockey game next year, I'll be 50 years old.
My glasses? Yeah, so you can see the tape mark there. That was where I got hit and broke the glasses. I got it was bleeding quite badly there for a moment, but
That's ugly.
it is. It's an ugly sport at times, but
I'll certainly tell you the enthusiasm for the game started there.
Oh, I would definitely highly recommend this. Yeah, it is fun. You get out. It's a lot better than sitting home eating potato chips.
If somebody asked me 25 years ago if I would still be playing at that age, I'd say no way.
I get to play with boys and girls. It teaches good skills.
Anybody who's raising kids or has raised kids knows how much it costs to play ice hockey, and here all you need is a stick, ordinary pair of gloves, maybe and a pair of sponge hockey shoes, and that's it. Away you can go.
You find out it's 1988, and you've just built your new rinks, you've upgraded, and you find out the site that you're on, you've just spiffed it up, and a housing development is on its way. They were already coming around us. We had to look at a site that would give us three options: being an industrial area, room to expand, and also have the capability to be hosting national tournaments, because we are the capital of sponge hockey in the world. And our choice was St. B. Industrial Park. I had done a major study showing the top 10 sporting facilities in the city of Winnipeg. Of the top 10, which I classified, drawing more than 2,000 people for sporting events, 9 of those 10 were on the west or south side of the city. Not one, with the exception of ours, was on the east, Canford Sports Center. St. B failed. St. B, there was plans for maybe an Air Canada building to go in there. They just did not want to part with expensive industrial land for the purpose of recreation. So when that site failed, we went back to the drawing board, and over the next 3 years, actually 4 years, from 89 till 92, 93, our organization spent $210,000, which represented 30% of our annual budget, on consultants, on lawyers, on variance applications, on zoning, on public meetings. And we took a run at 5 different sites in the city of Winnipeg. And the feedback we got from the community residents was, geez, we like your programs. What you're doing is great. It's fantastic for the city. But we don't want you in our backyard. It was the NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome. It turned out that the sixth site we went after, we were successful. And ironically, that sixth site, $210,000 later, was the very first site that was refused.
As we came down the long, muddy road, right, had to park the car and walk through the mud and the rubble and the debris that's been dumped there for the last 14 years, right? What we saw was acreage that became his field of dreams. And we both stood there in humble awe, shall we put it that way, and thought of the potential of what could be done with this site.
This is the future home of the Canford Sports Complex. We've called it Canford Park. It's 42 acres being developed in the first phase, which will consist of baseball diamonds, 12 sponge hockey rinks. Towards the skyline of downtown, you're going to have 4 touch football fields. You see people celebrating, you see people coming and going, and in an area of the heartland of the city of Winnipeg, this location alone is accessible to 15,000 Winnipeggers within 15 minutes. And this site's going to be our new home for 25 years. And we see over 1 million sporting games to play over the next 25 years out of this location. And we're talking about reasons to stay in Winnipeg. You know, what we do at Canford and keeping people active can't keep the Jets in town, may not keep the Bombers here, but in our small way, maybe having the thousands and thousands of people in Winnipeg playing amateur sports at this location, maybe this little dream will be one of the reasons why some of the Winnipeggers will stay in Winnipeg.
I truly believe that if it was built, they will come because they will build it. There is a couple thousand people that have signed and dedicated to provide voluntary help to help build it. They're willing to put in their own time, but you need materials. There are some things that can't be done on a voluntary basis and requires that type of funding.
Canford, which stands for Can Build Facilities and Operate Programs for Winnipeg, and the D on the end, we're determined to do it without government funding to operate those programs.
You consider how much money it costs to build a facility like this, and if you talk about the social benefits of it in terms of keeping people active and healthy and out of trouble, if you're talking about kids, I think John's into offering family things where the family can come out and all be together at this function. It's not like Dad leaves the family at home, comes out and plays. Everybody can come out. There's something for everybody there, so it becomes a family activity. I mean, you talk about getting bang for your buck. If you just look at those social things, and maybe some economic spin-off that results even from those social things, it's a no-brainer. Build it.
There's got to be some people out there that can make this come true sooner. And when I say come true, it's definitely coming true, but I'd rather happen in '95 than in 1999. So if there's something that I'm looking at, I have to capitalize on all those good people out there in the city that have the expertise, that are more skilled and more willing and more able than I am to run with certain parts of this project. And I'm looking forward to hopefully having phones ring in the city and say, hey, look at, you know what, we saw the guy on TV and I think I can help him, and I know that I'd like to help him. I won't turn away anybody.
It's something that's only in Winnipeg mostly. It's hard to explain.
I guess because Winnipeg, we're always teased probably about our winters, and this way we can kind of show the rest of Canada that we can take it.
Where can you have outdoor ice all winter?
Winnipeg's always had such a stigma of people, you know, always hearing of people going away and not wanting to stay here. And I mean, let's face it, we're very fortunate to have a winter. A lot of other people don't have it, and just take advantage of it. I mean, it's great.
It's funny, they don't even know about this out west.
They don't know what it's like to play in minus 40-degree weather. It's wet. It really is fun. And it's what makes us tougher in Winnipeg. That's what we like to think.
His final accomplishment, his 649, will be the fulfillment of his Canford dream. That's when he will win the big time, is when this thing gets built.
If you're judging richness in bank account and possessions, I'm not rich. But if you are judging it in memories and family and what I've done for the community or what I intend to do, I think I'm amongst the richest in the world.
Guys, he wants you down there. Is that it? Where's the sunset?